The conference room on the 19th floor had a wall of glass that looked straight down into the data hall, rows of servers blinking blue through the floor below us, the quiet machinery that paid every salary in the building. I'd spent 17 years making those lights stay on. Holt Ritterhoff had been at Veltara Stack for 4 months, and he was about to tell a room full of people that I was the thing slowing them down. He slid a single page across the table. "Effective today," he said, not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. "We're streamlining reliability under the platform org. We don't need a babysitter for servers." Someone near the window laughed, one short, nervous sound, then nothing. I looked at the page. I looked at the data hall blinking below us, and I thought about the 3 contracts in the vendor system that had my name on them, not the company's, not Veltara's, mine. I signed where he pointed. I didn't say a word about what that signature would unlock. My badge still worked when I came in that last Monday. That was the strange part. I'd half expected it to fail at the turnstile, some clean administrative cut, but the light blinked green and the gate opened the way it had 11,000 mornings before. Whatever Holt had set in motion, the building hadn't caught up to it yet. The building rarely did. That was sort of the whole problem. I'm Nadia Beaumont. For 17 years, I ran site reliability for Veltara Stack, first as the only engineer who'd answer a 3 a.m. page, then as the woman whose name ended up on the operations org chart with a title that undersold what I actually did: Director of Site Reliability. On paper, it sounded like middle management. In practice, it meant I was the person who kept 12,000 servers across 4 data centers running at the uptime numbers our customers paid premium rates to depend on. Hospitals ran scheduling on us. 2 national banks ran overnight settlement on us. A logistics platform that moved 1/5 of the country's parcels ran its routing on us. When people talk about the cloud, they imagine something weightless. I spent my career in the rooms where the cloud is actually a 40,000 square foot hall of humming metal that throws off enough heat to warm a small town, and somebody has to make sure it never, ever stops. Veltara had grown up around me. When I started, we were a scrappy co-location outfit with 1 facility in an old printing plant, and a founder named Wendell Sarash, who believed reliability was a moral commitment, not a line item. He used to walk the data hall at night just to listen to it. "You can hear when something's wrong before the dashboards do," he told me once, and he was right, and I learned to hear it too. Wendell sold his majority stake 6 years ago and stepped back to a non-executive board seat, and the company that replaced his Veltara was sleeker, faster, hungrier for margin. I didn't love all of it, but I understood it. Companies grow up. So do people. What the new Veltara never quite grasped was how much of its reliability lived in arrangements that had been built by hand years earlier by me, because back then there was no one else to build them. Let me explain the thing that mattered, because the whole story turns on it, and it isn't dramatic. It's paperwork. When we expanded into our second facility, the one in the River District, we needed 3 things we couldn't do ourselves. We needed a backup power vendor willing to guarantee generator response inside a contractual window. We needed a cooling systems partner who'd warranty the redundancy on our chiller loops. And we needed an international uptime certification, a designation issued by a European infrastructure standards body, so that our overseas clients could legally route regulated workloads through us. All 3 of those required a named, accountable individual. A human being who signed, who held the credential, who was the person of record the vendor and the certifying body could call when something went wrong at 4 a.m. In a bigger, more careful company, that person would have been an entity, a role, a title that transferred cleanly when someone left. But Veltara in those years wasn't careful, it was surviving, and the person standing in the data hall at 4 a.m. when the chiller partner needed a signatory was me. So the contracts named me, Nadia Beaumont, individually, as the registered responsible party, not the director of site reliability, whomever that may be. Me. My name. The vendors preferred it that way. They wanted a person, not a job description. And nobody ever went back to clean it up, because cleaning it up would have meant renegotiating 3 agreements that were working perfectly, and you don't renegotiate things that work. You leave them alone and you forget their load-bearing. I didn't forget. But I never made noise about it either. It just sat in the back of my mind, the way you know where the fuse box is in a house you've lived in for years. Holt Ritterhoff arrived in the spring. He came from a platform company 3 times our size, and he talked the way people from platform companies 3 times our size talk, about velocity, about abstraction layers, about how infrastructure was a solved problem that just needed the right tooling. He had a habit of saying at scale the way other people say, Amen. In his first all hands, he put up a slide that said, reliability is a feature, not a department, and half the engineering org nodded like he'd invented gravity. I requested a one-on-one in his second week. I wanted to walk him through the things that weren't in any system, the hand-built arrangements, the vendor relationships, the certification that had my name on it. The institutional knowledge that lived in my head and nowhere else. I'd built a 40-page internal document over the years trying to capture it, but documents only get you so far. The rest is judgment, and judgment doesn't paste into a wiki. He gave me 20 minutes and spent 12 of them on his phone. Nadia, he said, when I tried to explain the certification, I appreciate the institutional history. I really do. But part of why I'm here is to get us off the bus factor dependencies. No offense, but if a company's uptime depends on one person knowing where the bodies are buried, that's not resilience. That's a liability. He smiled. We're going to systematize all of this. Some of it can't be systematized by Friday, I said. Some of these are external. There are signatories. There's a certification that has to be reissued by an outside body, and that takes months, and the application requires. We'll handle it. He was already standing. I've got a sink. I went back to my desk on the 17th floor and looked out at the river. I could see the second facility from there, a low gray building with no windows, the most important ugly box in my life. I thought about telling him more directly. I thought about putting it in writing, escalating, making myself impossible to ignore. And then I thought, he's been told. He's an SVP. He's been told, clearly, that there are external dependencies tied to a named individual, and he waved it off as institutional history. I'd done my job. I'd raised it. If he wanted to systematize 17 years of load-bearing arrangements by force of confidence, that was a choice he was qualified, on paper, to make. So I did something I'm not entirely proud of and not entirely sorry for. I stopped pushing. I let the man who knew everything keep knowing everything. Over the next 2 months, I watched him restructure my org around me. He brought in a platform reliability lead from his old company, a sharp, exhausted-looking guy named Caspian Vey, who clearly hadn't been told what he was inheriting. He moved my best 2 engineers onto a tooling project. He renamed my function twice. In meetings, he'd refer to the legacy ops approach, while looking at me with a kind of patient sympathy, the way you look at a fax machine that still, inexplicably, works. The week before he fired me, Caspian Vey caught me in the hallway by the elevators. He looked uneasy. Hey, random question. The River District cooling contract. There's a signatory field in the vendor portal, and it's just a person's name, not the company. Is that normal? It's normal for us, I said. Okay. Holt wants me to migrate all the vendor relationships into the new procurement system. Clean handoff. Should be fine, right? I looked at him for a moment. He was a decent engineer who'd been handed a map with half the roads missing. Make sure you talk to legal about the named agreements before you change anything, I said. Some of them, the relationship doesn't transfer just because the system entry does. He nodded the way people nod when they've already decided it'll be fine. Cool. Thanks. It would not be fine, but that wasn't mine to carry anymore. They did it in the 19th floor conference room, the one with the glass wall over the data hall, which I've always thought was an act of architectural honesty. Put the people who decide things directly above the machines that the decisions land on, and let them watch the lights blink while they talk. Holt had called it a transition sink. There were 6 of us at the table, him at the head, Caspian Vey, looking like he hadn't slept. A woman from People Operations named Priscilla Aldis with a folder and a careful expression. 2 of Holt's platform lieutenants who I'd met maybe twice. And me, with a coffee I'd poured downstairs out of habit, 11 minutes before my badge was scheduled to die. He didn't waste time. I'll give him that. Nadia, thanks for coming up. I want to be direct, because I think you deserve directness after your time here. He folded his hands. We're consolidating reliability into the platform org. Effective today, the director of site reliability role is being eliminated. This isn't about performance. It's about architecture. We're building a company that doesn't need a single point of failure standing in a data hall at 3 a.m. He slid the page across. The same kind of single page Wendell used to call the saddest unit of paper in the building. A separation agreement, severance terms, a signature line. We don't need a babysitter for servers, Holt said. Lighter now, almost warm, like it was a thing we could both find funny. We need a system. Priscilla Aldis slid her own folder forward and began, gently, to explain the severance. I half listened. I was watching the data hall through the glass, the long blue rows of it, breathing, the chillers in the river district running on a warranty that, in roughly 72 hours, would have no registered responsible party because the only registered responsible party was sitting in this room being told her role no longer existed. One of Holt's lieutenants, a young guy with very white sneakers, actually laughed at the babysitter line. A short, bright, involuntary laugh, the kind that escapes before the brain checks the room. He covered it with a cough. Nobody else made a sound. Caspian Vey was staring at the table like it owed him money. I want to tell you I felt rage. The honest answer is that I felt something cooler and farther down, a sort of stillness. The way the data hall goes quiet in the half-second after a power event before the generators catch. I'd given this place 17 years. I'd missed weddings for it. I'd talked a panicked junior through a cascading outage from a hospital parking lot at 2 a.m. while my father was in the building behind me. And the man ending it had been here for 4 months and thought reliability was a feature. Do you have any questions? Priscilla asked kindly. Just one, I said. I turned to Holt. Did Caspian migrate the River District vendor agreements into the new procurement system yet? Holt blinked, thrown by the change of subject. Yes. We closed out the vendor migration last week. Clean handoff. Why? No reason, I said, just tidying up in my head. That was true and it wasn't, because what I'd just learned was that the trigger had already been pulled. The migration closed out meant the system entries had been changed. The company had quietly tried to swap my name out of the vendor portals for a generic corporate entity, the way Holt liked things, clean and role-based and bus factor-free, and that's the part nobody in the room understood. You can change a name in a portal. You cannot change who a contract names. The cooling vendor's warranty, the backup power guarantee, the European certification, those weren't database fields. They were legal instruments. They named Nadia Beaumont as the accountable party, and the terms of all three said the same thing in slightly different language. If the registered responsible individual ceases to hold an authorized operational role at the customer, the agreement's performance guarantees are suspended pending recertification of a new responsible party. They just eliminated my role. On purpose. In writing. With a people operations representative present as a witness and a severance agreement as the paper trail. I signed the separation agreement. Steady, precise. I didn't read it closely because it didn't matter. The only document in the room that mattered was the one Holt didn't know existed, and it was 3 documents, and they all had my name on them. "I appreciate everything you built here, Nadia," Holt said, standing, offering a hand. Genuinely. I shook it. His grip was confident. "Take care of the River District chillers," I said. "They're temperamental in the heat." "We've got it handled," he said. It was the last week of June. The forecast for the weekend was the first real heat of the summer. I gathered my coffee, left the badge on the table. They didn't even ask for it, an oversight that felt almost poetic, and walked to the elevator. Caspian Vey caught up to me in the lobby. He looked sick. "The signatory thing," he said quietly. "When I migrated the vendor entries, I put the company name in. Legal said it was fine. They said it was fine." "I know," I said. "Was it not fine?" I looked at this tired, decent man who'd been handed a map with half the roads missing and told to drive fast. "Caspian," I said, "when the chiller vendor's automated compliance check runs this weekend and it doesn't find an authorized responsible party on file, call me. I'll explain it then. It'll make more sense when you're looking at it." I walked out into the heat. My phone, the personal one, the one the certification body had on record, was already in my pocket. It would start ringing soon enough. Let me pause right here, because I think this is the moment the whole thing actually turned. Not the firing, but the handshake, the "we've got it handled." Let me pause right here, because I think this is the moment the whole thing actually turned. Not the firing, but the handshake, the "we've got it handled." I've asked myself 100 times since. Should I have warned them harder? Sat Holt down, made him understand, forced the room to listen? Or had I already done my part the first week when I tried and he checked his phone? I genuinely don't know. So tell me what you'd have done. Fought to be heard, or let the man who knew everything keep knowing everything? Drop it in a comment. I read everyone. And if you've ever been the load-bearing person nobody noticed, you might want to stay for what came next, because the weekend is when the heat arrived, and so did the phone calls. Subscribe if you want to see how far it went. Saturday, 11:08 a.m. The heat had arrived overnight the way real summer always does in the River District. Not a slope, but a wall. 94 degrees by mid-morning with the kind of humidity that makes the air feel like a held breath. I was on my balcony with a book I wasn't reading when my personal phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, but a country code I did. Western Europe. The certification body. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. The voice on the other end was a compliance coordinator named Margit, polite and precise in the way of people whose job is to enforce standards nobody thanks them for. "Ms. Beaumont, I apologize for contacting you on a weekend. I'm calling regarding the operational uptime certification registered to Facility 2 at Valterra Stack. Our quarterly automated verification ran this morning and returned an exception. The registered responsible individual, yourself, no longer appears authorized in the customer's operational directory. Can you confirm your current role at the organization?" There it was. The system, doing exactly what systems do. Not malice, not revenge, arithmetic. "I can't," I said. "As of Thursday, I no longer hold an operational role at Valterra Stack. My position was eliminated." A pause. The careful sound of someone realizing a much larger thing is now in motion. I see. Ms. Beaumont, I'm obligated to inform you that under the terms of the certification, the loss of the registered responsible party without a pre-filed successor triggers an immediate provisional suspension of the certification, effective at the close of the verification window, which is Sunday, midnight Central European Time. The certification cannot be reissued without a full reapplication, which requires a facility re-audit. The current backlog for re-audit is approximately 5 months. I understand, I said. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. She was quiet for a moment. Does your organization understand the consequence here? Several of the workloads routed through that facility are regulated. Without active certification, our records indicate at least one financial client and one healthcare client are contractually prohibited from running regulated operations through Facility 2. They will receive automated non-compliance notices Monday morning. They don't understand it yet, I said, but they will. I want to be clear about what was and wasn't happening here because it would have been easy, satisfying even, to imagine I'd built a bomb and walked away whistling. I hadn't. I didn't make a single call to a single client. I didn't tip off a regulator. I didn't release a dossier or leak a memo or do one active thing. I sat on a balcony with a book. Everything that was about to happen happened because Veltara had removed the one human being who anchored 3 external instruments, and the instruments did what they were written to do on their own schedule with the indifference of physics. You can fire the person who knows where the fuse box is. You cannot fire the fuse box. To understand how it got this load-bearing, you have to go back 8 years to the night we were trying to win our first regulated European client, and the certification body's auditor, a different one, retired now, sat across from me at 1 a.m. in the River District facility with a checklist 40 pages long. Your redundancy is good, he'd said. Your documentation is a disaster, but that's normal for a company your size. Here's what I need. 1 person. 1 accountable human who holds this certification, who I can call, who I can hold responsible. Standards bodies don't certify companies, Ms. Beaumont. We certify people who happen to work at companies. Companies lie. People who put their own name on a line tend not to. So I'd put my name on the line. Literally. And then, over the years, I'd done the same thing with the backup power vendor, who wanted a named operational contact for their generator response guarantee, and with the chiller partner, who warrantied the River District cooling loops only on the condition that a qualified individual of record signed off on the maintenance protocols quarterly. 3 instruments. 1 name. Mine. Built one desperate, under-resourced night at a time, never as a scheme, only ever as the answer to the question who will be responsible. A question Veltara, in its scrappy years, kept answering with the same word, Nadia. And then Veltara grew up and decided that depending on one person was a liability to be engineered away, which it was. They just engineered it away by removing the person while leaving every instrument she anchored fully intact, and now unanchored. My phone buzzed again at 1:52 p.m., a text this time, from Caspian Vey. The chiller vendor portal is throwing a compliance lock. It won't let us schedule the emergency maintenance call. It keeps asking for an authorized responsible party and rejecting the company name. The River District inlet temp is climbing. Holt is asking what's happening. You said to call. I looked at the thermometer on my balcony. 96 and rising. In a windowless gray box across the river, 12,000 servers were generating heat at the exact moment their cooling warranty had no one authorized to invoke it, and the vendor's own system, built, like all good systems, to refuse service to an unverified party, was politely declining to send help. I called him back. Walk me through what you're seeing, I said. His voice was tight. Inlet temps in Hall 2 are 8 degrees above nominal and climbing about a degree every 20 minutes. The chillers are running, but one loop is underperforming, and we can't get the vendor to dispatch a tech because the portal says we have no, Nadia, it says we have no authorized responsible individual on the maintenance agreement. What does that mean? It had your name. I changed it to the company. Legal said. Legal was wrong, I said gently, because there was no point being anything else. The warranty doesn't recognize the company. It recognizes me. And on Thursday, Veltara removed me from any authorized operational role. So as far as that vendor's system is concerned, the River District facility currently has no qualified responsible party, which means the warranty's performance guarantees are suspended, which means their dispatch system won't send an emergency tech, because emergency dispatch is a warranty service, and the warranty is suspended. A long silence. In the background, I could hear the specific sound I knew better than my own heartbeat, the rising whine of a data hall whose cooling isn't keeping up. How do we fix it? Caspian said. Not a question. A plea. You can't today, I said. Not in the next few hours. The only person the vendor's system will accept as authorized is the registered responsible individual, and there's a recertification process to name a new one, and it doesn't happen on a Saturday. Holt is going to ask me who can authorize it. There's only one name in their system, Caspian. The silence on the line had a different quality now, the sound of a man turning to look at someone across a room. It's yours, he said. It's mine. They held the call at 6:40 on Sunday evening, and I almost didn't join it. Caspian had texted the bridge details with a single line underneath. Holt asked me to ask you, please, Hall 2 is at risk. And I sat looking at it for a while, because there's a version of this where you let it burn, and I understood the appeal of that version better than I'd admit out loud. 17 years. A babysitter for servers, the young man with the white sneakers laughing. But Wendell used to walk that data hall at night just to listen to it, and I'd learned to hear it the way he did, and the truth is, I have never once in my life been able to listen to a hall in distress and feel nothing. So I joined. There were 11 people on the call. I could tell from the little green tiles, Holt, Caspian, Priscilla from People Operations, which told me legal exposure was now the headline. 2 of Holt's platform lieutenants. And this was the detail that told me how bad it had gotten. Wendell Sarash himself, the founder, dialed in from his non-executive board seat, a square of a man in a kitchen somewhere with reading glasses pushed up into gray hair. Holt was talking when I joined, and his voice had lost the warm, patient register he used when he was the smartest person in the room. So the situation as I understand it is that there's a contractual technicality preventing the cooling vendor from dispatching, and we have inlet temps in Hall 2 now 11 degrees above nominal with regulated workloads at risk. Nadia, thank you for joining. I'll be direct. We need you to authorize the vendor dispatch. I can't authorize a vendor dispatch, I said. I don't work at Veltara. You eliminated my role on Thursday. It's an emergency. Surely there's a... Holt. Wendell's voice, quiet, cut straight through. Let her explain it, from the start. So we're all looking at the same thing. So I explained it the way you explain a load-bearing wall to the person who just knocked it out. 3 external instruments. The cooling warranty, the backup power guarantee, the European uptime certification. All 3 naming me individually as the registered responsible party. All 3 written by standards bodies and vendors who'd been burned by companies before to suspend their performance guarantees the moment that named individual stops holding an authorized operational role. You didn't break the cooling warranty by being careless, I said. You broke it by being precise. You eliminated my role in writing with a people operations witness, And the moment that paperwork posted to the operational directory, every one of those instruments did exactly what it was designed to do. The certification provisionally suspends at midnight European time tonight, about 4 hours from now. The cooling warranty is already suspended, which is why the vendor's own system won't dispatch a tech to Hall 2. And the backup power guarantee suspends on its next verification, which is Tuesday. Tuesday, one of the lieutenants repeated faintly. There's a regulated financial client and a regulated healthcare client routed through Facility 2, I went on. Their compliance systems get automated non-compliance notices Monday morning when the certification suspension posts. Under their own regulatory obligations, they have to begin migrating regulated workloads off an uncertified facility immediately. I've seen the contracts. The financial client's penalty exposure for running regulated operations through a non-compliant facility, plus the migration costs they'll bill back to us, plus the SLA breach credits on the healthcare side, Veltara's total exposure across the River District facility runs to $67.3 million. I heard someone exhale. It might have been Holt. That number assumes nobody recertifies, I said. And nobody can recertify by midnight, because recertification requires naming a new responsible individual and reapplying, and the standards body's re-audit backlog is 5 months. Holt's voice came back, and it had changed. The confidence had a crack down the middle of it now, and he was reaching for the thing men like him reach for last. Okay. Nadia, look, let's be reasonable adults. You're clearly the only person who understands this system. So let's get you back on as a contractor, today, emergency basis, name you the responsible party again, and you authorize the dispatch and refile the certification. Whatever the rate is, I'll sign it right now. You want to rehire me, I said, into the role you eliminated on Thursday, because the company that depends on one person knowing where the bodies are buried is a liability. Silence. I raised this with you in your second week, I said. I asked for 20 minutes. You gave me 12 and spent most of them on your phone. I told you there were external dependencies tied to a named individual. You called it institutional history. You said you'd handle it. You said we'd systematize it. So I stopped pushing because you're an SVP and you'd been told clearly, and you decided you knew better. Nadia. Holt's voice cracked fully now. People's jobs are on the line. Customers are on the line. You can be right about all of it and still help us. If you let Hall 2 cook and lose those clients, you're not punishing me. You're punishing 400 people who never... I joined this call, I said. Didn't I? That stopped him. I'm not letting Hall 2 cook, I said. I never was. But I'm not coming back as your emergency contractor at whatever rate either, so you can fire me again in October once the crisis is boring. So here's what's going to happen, and it's not a negotiation. I'd written it on a single page that afternoon, because I'd known we'd get here. 1. I'm reinstated as the registered responsible party, not as a contractor, as a full officer of operational reliability, reporting to the board, not to platform. 2. The reliability function is rebuilt as an independent department with a charter that says external dependencies tied to named individuals are reviewed by the board, not waived off by an SVP. 3. Holt's authority over reliability is removed. Permanently. He can run platform. He does not touch the data halls again. You can't dictate org structure, Holt started. Holt. Wendell again. Quiet. Final. The founder who used to walk the hall at night. Stop talking. The line went still. Down in the River District, 11 degrees above nominal and climbing, 12,000 servers waited on a sentence. Nadia, Wendell said, on behalf of the board, accepted. All 3. Send me the page. I'll countersign it tonight. A pause, and something almost like a smile in his voice. And then, if you'd be so kind, authorize the dispatch. I'd like the hall to stop screaming. I authorized the dispatch at 7:21 Sunday evening. It took one phone call. Me, reinstated 30 minutes earlier as the registered responsible party, reading my verification code to a tired vendor coordinator named Phipps, who'd been waiting all weekend for a name his system would accept. The portal turned green. The emergency tech was rolling within the hour. By 11 p.m., the underperforming chiller loop in Hall 2 was back to spec, and the inlet temps came down the way of fever breaks, slowly and then all at once. I refiled the certification application Monday at dawn, ahead of the suspension posting, with a successor party clause this time, so that no single elimination could ever again unanchor the whole facility. The financial client's compliance notice was withdrawn before their markets opened. The healthcare client never got theirs. The $67.3 million exposure that had been 4 hours from becoming real simply didn't. It evaporated back into the realm of things that almost happened, which is where most catastrophes live, unseen, prevented by people nobody thanks. Holt Ritterhoff lasted 9 more days. There was no dramatic firing, no walk to the elevator with a box. That wasn't Wendell's style, and the board didn't need the theater. What happened was quieter and more total. The reliability function was lifted out from under platform and chartered as its own department, reporting to the board exactly as my single page had specified. Holt's name simply stopped appearing on anything that touched a data hall. He kept the title for a week and a half, a general with no territory, and then there was a brief, bloodless announcement about him pursuing opportunities outside the company, and his green tile never appeared on a call again. The slide he'd been so proud of, reliability is a feature, not a department, got quietly retired along with him. It turned out reliability was very much a department. It just had a door now, and a charter, and a name on it that the board couldn't wave away. Caspian Vey stayed. He found me in the River District facility the following week. He'd started coming in person, I think because the weekend had scared something honest into him, and he stood in the doorway of the cooling plant for a moment before he said anything. "I migrated your name out of 3 contracts because a portal told me to," he said. "And legal told me it was fine, and I believe the system over the person." "Everybody does," I said. "That's why the system kept naming a person." He nodded slowly. "Teach me where the bodies are buried. All of them. I want to actually know." So I did. That's the part of this I'm proudest of, more than the org chart, more than watching Holt's confidence crack down the middle on a Sunday call. I spent the next months walking Caspian and 2 new reliability engineers through every hand-built arrangement, every named instrument, every load-bearing wall that 17 years had left invisible inside the building. We documented all of it, really documented it, the judgment and not just the steps, and then we built it so that no instrument anywhere named one human being without a board-reviewed successor standing behind them. I made myself, deliberately, no longer the single point of failure. Not because Holt had been right that depending on one person was a liability. He'd been right about that. He'd just thought the fix was removing the person. The fix was honoring her long enough to learn what she carried. Wendell took me to dinner once it was all settled. He still walked the data hall at night sometimes, he told me, just to listen to it. "You could have let it burn," he said. "I'd have understood." "I know," I said. "I almost did. But I joined the call." He raised his glass. "Why?" I thought about the hall in distress, the rising whine I'd never once in my life been able to hear and feel nothing. "Because somebody had to be responsible," I said. That was always the only question. They spent 4 months trying to engineer away the answer, and the answer kept being my name. I still keep the separation agreement Holt slid across the table that Thursday. The saddest unit of paper in the building. I keep it because of what it taught me, which is this. They can eliminate your role, your title, your badge, your name in a portal. But if you are the person who has quietly held the thing up, removing you doesn't remove the weight. It just shows everyone all at once exactly what you were carrying. They found out over one weekend in June. It cost them almost nothing in the end, only the 4 hours it took to admit whose name it had to be.